What up, Startup Nation? This is Dominic Lawson, the host of The Startup Life, here with another book review. And before we dive into the book, big shout out to Greenleaf Book Group, who has, amazing authors, amazing expertise, and amazing books, Startup Nation, that you want to put in your entrepreneurial toolkit. I know you guys are into self-help. I know you guys are into professional development because clearly you're listening to this show, but you wanted to check out greenleafbookgroup.com for that very reason. But look, maybe you're an influencer in the wings here and you have a book inside of you. They got you there too. greenleafbookgroup.com/submissions. They have a submission form there and you can fill that out to start your exploratory process to get the book from inside of you out into the market. So once again, to check out the amazing authors, amazing books, greenleafbookgroup.com. And if you're an aspiring author yourself, greenleafbookgroup.com/submissions, Startup Nation. But let's get back to the business at hand here. Today's book we're going to review is From Individual to Empire, a guide to building an authentic and powerful brand by our good friend, Laura Bull. Now look, I say that she's our good friend, but we've never met her before. And the reason we say that she's our good friend is because we came across her social media profile a few months back and we was like, oh man, she would be amazing to come on the show. She has amazing expertise. She has amazing experience that she can share, like those tangible tools. You know how much we love tangible tools, but she must be really solid on the content that she provides. Let me just share with you the background to even further prove my point, Startup Nation. Laura Bull spent 10 years with Sony Music Entertainment, where she became one of the company's youngest executives at the age of 28. During her tenure, she spearheaded artist development and marketing for globally recognized brands, get this, Startup Nation, including Carrie Underwood, Brad Paisley, the icon Johnny Cash, the man in black himself, and among hundreds of other artists from Arista, RCA, Columbia, Epic, and Monument Records. A veteran of the music industry, she has served more than a decade on the National Advisory Board for Musicians on Call. Look, Startup Nation, if anybody knows about building a brand, it's people in the music industry. Let me be clear about that. But there's also the practical teaching side and experience that Laura brings as well. As a consultant and speaker, Bull has been an adjunct professor for 6 years teaching disciplines in marketing and music business at multiple colleges and universities, including SMU's Timberland Advertising Institute. She has a BBA from Belmont University's Mike Curb School of Music Business and a Master of Liberal Studies from Southern Methodist University. Like I said, Startup Nation, from that right there, that should tell you super experience, has very tons of knowledge that can help us on building a brand, which leads me back to her book, From Individual to Empire. Now look, the book is broken up into 3 parts. Part 1, the influencer. Part 2, the brand matrix. And part 3, boosting the brand. Let's talk about part 1 a little bit. She opens up the book with this fictional commercial that she's drawn up in her head of a Beyonce Home Depot commercial. These are 2 powerful brands, right? But at the same time, that commercial could go very well if done right, or it can go terribly wrong. And so that's where that background, that teaching acumen really comes out at the beginning of the book. Now, there are a few things I love about Laura, and it really comes out in this book. For one, and there is no denying this, she is knowledgeable and she is extremely experienced about building a brand and stuff like that. When you're talking about country music or just music in general or anything else, from politics to being a YouTuber or even one of those flamboyant CEOs like Elon Musk or something like that, like there is no denying she knows how to get that out of just about anybody, and she breaks it down to a science throughout this book. But on top of that, Startup Nation, one thing about Laura, she is going to shoot it straight. There is no sugarcoating. There is no holding your hand. Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. I feel like if she's holding your hand, she's dragging you to the finish line. That's the only reason she's holding your hand, because she really does want you to understand how important it is to build a brand. You know, and she even, accentuates this with a story about a country music star we all know and love. She doesn't give a name, but about how he was kind of being whiny on a tour bus and stuff like that. But there's a quote in part 1 that just, not only did it make me laugh, it just made me look like, okay, she is, she ain't for the sugarcoat any of this stuff. And so it really sets the tone of the book. And so she's talking about how a lot of times people don't want to share their personal stories, share their craft, be vulnerable and stuff like that, because for fear of feeling like they're selling out or something like that. And so Laura really shuts that down in this quote. And she says, quote, "Public figures must be willing to be vulnerable, sharing their true selves in order to create a connection with their audience. But sometimes an artist's craft is so personal, they don't want to taint the experience by turning their work into a commodity. In this case, my advice would be to go home and enjoy your work privately and decide on another career path to pay the rent. For everyone else who doesn't believe that commercialism equates to selling out, read on and you will learn how to identify your core brand and how to promote it publicly," end quote. And so right then and there, in the very beginnings of the book, she's letting you know, like, look, if you're one of those people like feel like, sharing the commodity that is you is selling out, like, nah, this may not be the book for you. You may want to get one of them other branding books. But at the very least, what I gather from that quote is that she's trying to help. She's trying to cut out all the fluff. She's trying to cut out all the noise. It's like, look, this is what we need to do. And a lot of times, Startup Nation, we need that kick in the butt. We need that oomph, if you will. And so in part one, she's breaking down and she's sharing with us these amazing examples of how brands are built amazingly well. And it's not by accident. We're talking about Beyonce, like I talked about with the commercial, but she's also talking about Taylor Swift and Oprah as well. All three of those people know how to build a brand and build a brand well. That doesn't mean they don't have missteps, and she shares some of that as well. Once again, that honest piece that I love about Laura. But she really breaks down with surgical precision about how to build a brand. One of the things you're going to see in this book about how being authentic is super important in building a brand. Look, we always hear these stories about Taylor Swift, like wrapping presents and going, inviting people to her home to album release parties and stuff like that. And people just like, oh my God, like she doesn't really do that stuff. She ain't really wrapping them presents personally and stuff like that. But the thing is, that's authentic to Taylor's brand, as Laura explains, because she was doing some of the similar things on MySpace. And, when she was on MySpace, she would respond to just about everybody's message who would send her a message on MySpace. And so once again, that brand consistency is across the board. And so the people who follow her, the Swifties, if you will, are extremely loyal to Taylor and her brand and what she does as well. She also talks about how that brand consistency across the board as well. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself because that's in part two, but I just thought it was kind of important to kind of point out now, since we're already talking about Taylor Swift. She talks about how when Taylor brought out the album 1989, about like every time you Googled Taylor Swift, every time you went to her social media or website or whatever the case may be, there was some type of 80s theme, hence the name of the album 1989. There was some type of 80s theme out there. So every touch point that you have with Taylor when she's promoting that new product, in this case her album, it's going to be the same, or at the very least it's going to be consistent, like from a thematic standpoint. And she breaks down how that's super important because, look, I know you do this, StartupNation, some of you out there, where you're one name on Twitter and you're another name on Facebook, you're another name on Instagram, and you have different type of themes all over the place. And so that's super important in building a brand as well. And so let me get to part two of the book as well. This is where she talks about the brand matrix, and she has this nice Venn diagram of the product, the narrative, and image, and in the middle is the brand or whatever the case, right? StartupNation, let me talk about the narrative part of that Venn diagram, because I thought this was super important. Chapter 8, the age of the narrative, and it talks about the different types of directions with the narrative that you don't want to go in. There's the inauthentic narrative, the common narrative, which she points out is extremely boring, if you will, because we've heard that story before. The muddled narrative, where you just kind of feel like you're not really clear on the direction or what the story is as well. The insincere narrative, the limiting narrative, and then there's the missing narrative. And I want to read a part from this section just briefly to kind of point out, because a lot of times people just feel like, oh, I'll just show up and everything will just work magically. Laura's like, no, that ain't the case. Quote, having no narrative is the worst possible scenario. Contrary to popular belief, the product will not speak for itself. Yet, this mistake is surprisingly common. Why? An influencer will go out into the marketplace thinking, I will use my charm to win them over. I'm pretty interesting. I can talk about anything. Charm and wit may open up a spot on the Tonight Show couch, but it won't keep that seat reserved for future appearances. If you don't have anything important to say, no one will listen, end quote. And StartupNation, look, how many times have we seen out there where people, where they're attractive and stuff like that, and that gets them in the door, but once they open their mouth, it's like, there's not really much there outside of the looks. And I think that's super important, as we dive into this world of like Instagram models, men and women, by the way, Instagram models, and people want to be influencers and stuff like that. Just because you show up doesn't mean you've made it. And she also talks about that in the book as well. There is never a sense of I made it. I don't care if you're Oprah, I don't care if you're Taylor Swift, Beyonce, Bethany Frankel, Miranda Lambert, who all are kind of featured in this book. That concept of I've made it and I don't have to work anymore does not exist. And Laura highlights this in the book as well. And then there's the last part of the book, Boosting the Brand, part 3, where she wraps it all up. The truth will always wins, the rules of evolution, in chapter 11, lean in. So what's the final verdict? This book, From Individual to Empire, A Guide to Building an Authentic and Powerful Brand, is a must buy. Let me explain why. Because for those of you who are entrepreneurs and CEOs and people trying to scale the corporate ladder, who are trying to build that personal brand, you already understand the importance of building a personal brand, but you're not entirely sure how to build it from the ground level up. This book is going to help you out with that. Also, for my other people who are the YouTubers and the aspiring podcasters, aspiring Instagram models and stuff like that, and you just feel like, I'm just going to show up and everything's going to work out well. This book is a must buy for you as well, because you probably need that kick in the pants, just a little bit, not a whole lot, just a slight kick in the pants. So that way you can understand why these concepts are so important, why this way of building the brand is super important. And Laura Bull is the perfect person to guide you in that direction. She pulls no punches, but she's also very knowledgeable. But more importantly, she just wants to get you to where you want to get on your path of entrepreneurship and your career path as well. Also, StartupNation, it's just a fun read, very engaging. There's humor, tons of anecdotes from some of the world's biggest stars, and Laura's tone and personality really comes through. Once again, she's very knowledgeable, but she's going to shoot you straight, but it's all in the place of getting you to where you want to get to, StartupNation. And that's the ultimate point of why you should read From Individual to Empire, A Guide to Building an Authentic and Powerful Brand by Laura Bull. And it's available on paperback and ebook on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and everywhere books are sold. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk to today's guest.